Okay, now recording is in progress. So thank you everyone for joining. I'm sure are a lot of members who would have wanted to join, but time-wise, it's not really, we can't really come at a common point. But I'm really thankful for you, Amanda, for agreeing to be interviewed. You're our first. And I've also thought of pairing interviewees with some of our members so that we all get to have that practice of informational interviewing. So for tonight, you are paired with Star. And Star is, she's been doing complaints analyst, she's complaints analyst.
A compliance analyst.
Oh, why did I say complaints? Anyway, so yeah, and Amanda has been a Salesforce consultant at Redpath Consulting. And she's actually the very first who told me that there's a big need for healthcare, for people with healthcare backgrounds in the Salesforce ecosystem. So I'll let you have the floor now, Star.
Okay, well, hi everyone.
If any of you have any questions, whatever, we'll just have you write them in the chat box while Star goes through her questions. All right?
Yeah, okay. I'll make sure to get those answered for you. I have my chat up and I'll be on the lookout. Like Lori said, I'm Star, but we're here to interview Amanda from Redpath Consulting. So Amanda, if you want to introduce yourself and give us a brief description of what you currently do.
Sure. So I think that, like many things, my background is probably not very interesting until you know whether or not it's going to be useful to you. So I'll go light on my professional history. It's all on LinkedIn if you want to see where I've been. But I worked the last 15 years in higher education in various roles, including working with, aspiring healthcare professionals and people working in continuing ed and so on. So I haven't been the person wearing the scrubs like, so many of you, but I've been working in parallel with folks and helping people get into the field. So about a year ago, a little over a year ago now, I had been looking at various data analysis, database kinds of work, found Salesforce, found my way into certification, and then I've been a consultant with Redpath for about 7-8 months now. So not even a year in a consulting role. So that's where I am now.
Okay, so why did you make the transition from, it seems like you're more of a educational background, to Salesforce?
Sure. Well, with the pandemic, I was already kind of aware that I liked being a location independent, and the higher ed work that I was doing was very, you got to be there in person. And no. So I was looking for that kind of work. I had been doing analysis kinds of things as well as along with teaching at the university. I was also doing the university equivalent of QA and KPI work and things like that. So it was in that way, it was a pretty equivalent kind of move. But a lot less programming in my previous, or even declarative programming in my previous kind of role. So yeah. And we can't, let's not sneeze at the money. Like, the money is much better in Salesforce than in education. And depending on where you are in healthcare, it could be much better, to be the behind the scenes tech person than it is in the frontline caregiving. So there's that element too, folks.
I think we can all say amen to that for sure. So what challenges did you face before landing your Salesforce job, as in while you were going through Trailhead or studying for your exam?
So I found, so Trailhead is lovely. Trailhead is not prep for the exams. Let's it's a good way of getting to know. Yes, I'm seeing all the head nods. I love seeing all the head nods. Yes. So it's a great way of like getting your feet wet, getting a first thing, blessings on them. But all of that, like click this button thing doesn't tell you the why you're clicking that button. So you work, all those other things like the focus on force and the, what other reading that you do outside of that kind of puts that in context is really helpful in preparing for certifications and things like that. Like many of the questions that I think we had to go over, it's like, how do you translate all of your previous career into Salesforce language, or being able to talk to a potential employer, and that's always that's part of what we're all here to talk about, I think. So that's not a one size fits all question, but I have some ideas that I'll go over in a bit.
Okay, so let's talk about the job application process. How was that for you? Was it easy? Did you go through plenty of rejections? How did you land your job at Redpath?
Right. Okay. So this is where again, knowing who my audience is here is really important. So raise your hand if you've got at least like 5 years of like professional something experience in your past. Many. Yeah. Okay. So what I made the like rookie error, and I wasted a lot of time just applying to random like Salesforce things through LinkedIn or whatever other openings. And looking back at it, I'm like, why did I do that? So what you already have a professional network, and that's how I found my role, and that's how I suspect you are going to find your roles and your way of getting into the field. So I was working on all of this, and I mentioned to a friend of mine that I was doing this thing, right? And she's like, "Oh yeah, she's in HR in a large company in Minneapolis." She's like, "Oh yeah, I've got some friends who are like doing Salesforce stuff. Let me know when you're ready for an informational interview." So I'm like, cool. So about the time I finished my cert, I'm like, now it's time for informational interview. So I reached out to her. She connected me up, and my second informational interview was like, "Hey, we've got this opening at Redpath. Why don't you apply, and I'll be your reference." And so like, she got some money because I was her referral. I got in the door with like a warm handoff, and it was a great fit. And I feel like could not have been more serendipitous. But I think that that's also it seems serendipitous, but I also think that it's not going to be uncommon for people who are not starting cold from their professional life, right? So I think that will be more common for many of you. And don't sell yourself short, like applying for every kind of nonsense thing. Aim at, do your market research. If anything else, I mean, I think that's what I'm gonna, if I had like one thing to leave you with, and I'm only like 10 minutes in, but my one thing that I want to leave you with is do your market research. Like, know who you want to work for, what size company, what size organization, what kind of work you really want to be doing in it, what kind of problem you want to be solving for people. That's really going to be, it'll set you so much apart from the person who says, "Give me a job." Right? You're going to, if you can say, "Hey, I really like doing this for this kind of organization. You're my ideal, employer because XYZ. And it's not just because I read your website, you're really my like ideal employer." Right? So that's what I would say for people. Wow.
So only second interview.
That's second informational interview got me into interviewing and applying and interviewing, and then it was a 3 interview process, kind of like the get to know you, and then a technical, and then the process of negotiating. And I will also say, don't sell yourself short. Even at this point, start thinking about your negotiation, because it came super fast, and I was not literally my technical interview ended And I got a call about an hour later from the HR lady saying, who you'll talk to later, saying, so we what's your salary range? And I was like, did not do my homework, people. You do your homework. Be prepared for that question, right? Okay.
That's great advice, actually. So how did you have any like fears going into the technical interview?
Not really. They gave me like a pre-list of like, build this thing. And so, and they expected that you're going to spend some time in some help documentation with when you're going to be building stuff. That's normal. Like the best architects that I know are Googling on the regular. So it's just part of working in the thing that, if you're not totally familiar with how you get the checkbox to do the thing to go down, that's normal. So as long as you can say, hey, here's how I did it. Sure, I looked at the help documentation. This thing was, this is how I wrote that formula. This is why I wrote that formula. That's what they're looking for. Yeah.
How long did they actually give you for to build out that technical?
Oh gosh, I think it was, they gave me like 4 or 5 days. It was like over a weekend. It was like an interview Wednesday to the following Monday or Tuesday. I don't remember exactly, but it was a decent length of time. And it was a modest ask. It wasn't like, here, design a whole solution for a company or something like that.
Okay, so I want to get to the questions from the LinkedIn group, because I don't think those fellows that asked the question are on the call, so I want to make sure that's answered. So we have 2 questions. They're kind of similar. The first one is from Ray, and he asks, how does one convey their healthcare experience to translate leverage into Salesforce via resumes or during interviews?
Right. So I think your best bet in doing that is the interview process, because your resume is, yes, write a good resume, have the action words, have, use integration and whatever terms you want to do there, collaboration, blah, blah, blah. But when you're in the interview, I would take that opportunity to not be passive in answering their questions. So you'll notice, even in this interview that I'm doing now, that I'm taking the question and I'm twisting it in the nicest possible way to get across the information that I actually want you to have. You can do this too, right? If you listen to any celebrity do an interview, they'll be asking all sorts of stupid questions, and the person will answer what it is they want to have people know. You can do that too, all right? So prep to say what it is you want them to know. Okay, so what do you want them to know? So you need to know first what it is that they really need. So as soon as you possibly can in that interview, start finding out what their actual pain points are. And you can do this, particularly if you're interested in a consulting role, by saying, okay, you're interested in me potentially as a consultant. So I'm going to, ask you kind of consultant-y, questions like I would ask a client, potential client, about what it is that you're really looking for, so that I can see, how I might fill your needs, right? So get from them, and then the answers will be clear. Well, of course, I've done this and this and this and this, and that's how that's how I'm going to be this brilliant person for you. But it's going to be requiring you to listen, ask, listen, and then integrate that with your experience, rather than necessarily have a lovely rehearsed speech ahead of time for what it is that you're looking at. By all means, practice your stories, but then know what it is that make sure you're listening to what it is that they actually think that they want.
Yes, and we actually have a question here. Did you ask your interviewer questions? If so, what questions did you ask?
Yeah, so one of the questions I've heard around a lot and I'd like is, what would success look like in this role? in particularly, you can put it down at 6 months and a year down the line. So what would it mean to be a successful member of your team? So that kind of gets at values. It gets at kind of what expectations they have about how fast you're going to get into the nitty-gritty of something, how it is that they want to interact with you, all of those kinds of questions. And it kind of fits in the key performance indexes, or measures, whatever it is that we're doing anyway. Like, okay, what's the measure of success for what it is you're trying to get out of this role? That's one of my favorites.
No, I like the advice of spinning it so that you can tell them the story that you want to tell them.
Yes. Please, everyone, do not put yourself in a position of being powerless. Please own your power. You are, already successful people. Claim it.
All right. So the last question from the LinkedIn group was from Ravi, which I hope I'm saying that right. How do I bring my extensive experience in healthcare IT into Salesforce Consulting and Solutioning for clients in the healthcare industry?
So look at all of those transferable skills you have, and then demonstrate them. Demonstrate how you listen, demonstrate how you problem solve, demonstrate how you speak to them in a way that's comprehensible, but also shows that you have the deep knowledge of your subject area. Yeah, that's what you do.
Now I would like to get into the job itself. So for us newbies who have never worked in a consulting position before, how is consulting compared to an hourly or salary job, or even just like a single admin role where you're only dealing with one org?
Sure. Okay. So I haven't lived in a single org business yet, so I can't tell you exactly that from that, but you are in a problem solving role, and you are project based for the most part. So there are consulting firms that do kind of admin related kind of tasks, so kind of have some more support contract kind of roles. So when somebody loses their password, they're available to fix the thing or what have you. That's not where Redpath is. Redpath is more, okay, you're a business, you either have Salesforce or you want to implement Salesforce or you want to upgrade something in Salesforce. So we're going to do discovery with you, really help you hone in on your business process. One of the real values that we give, particularly for our nonprofit and education folks, is helping sometimes define their business processes, because it's like, okay, well, Cheryl always does this, and then Lamar always does that, and then but it's not like a straight process as a business would think about it. So again, not to just nonprofit world, but sometimes it's kind of mom and pop. So we help them define what it is that they're looking for. Big part of it is, how do you estimate the price tag on that? That's not something you're going to do as a newbie in the field. That's something that's going to be done by your leads and your sales folks and things like that. But trying to figure out, okay, how much work is this thing that they're asking for actually going to take, before we start adding in, oh, wouldn't that be nice, and wouldn't that be nice, and wouldn't that be nice, right? So it's project based. It tends to be billed by hours, which is probably different than most of previous life. So, well, I don't know. I mean, in the medical thing, you might be billed by procedure or by visit or by something like that. So it could be somewhat similar. But I'm a salaried person, but it's important that I am contributing billable hours based on client work as a significant part of my workday. So that's probably something that's a little bit different, a little bit more like a lawyer than maybe some other healthcare roles. Anything else that you'd like on that, folks?
Yeah. So how long does a project typically last?
Oh, there isn't really a typical. So, size and price tag are really close together, right? So the size could be anything from maybe a month of working on what we might call a vanilla organization, where there's not a lot of automation, not a lot of custom stuff, just like getting the basic things lined up and maybe doing some data migration into it, versus I'm working on one which is part of a very large healthcare organization, and we have been there 4 months, and we are going to be there probably another 2 or 3, and we are supporting their also full-time Salesforce team of about 8 people, and it's just a monster of an organization and a monster of a project. So it can range really dramatically in consulting.
Trying to see if anyone else has any consulting
Oh,
specific.
yeah, let's see. I'll take the easy one. Yes, I work remote only, and we wanted to do an in-person annual meeting, but with COVID that didn't happen. So I'll be flying there for probably a summer meeting. If it is a local organization, sometimes they'll do an in-person meeting, but that's been a big transition for Redpath in particular, which was very local based, to be spreading out and now have people across time zones and geography. So it's a transition. It's been a really good one, I think. What soft skills do you need to use that? Well, I expected to use all my soft skills. I mean, really, people are people are people are people wherever you go, right? So you're going to have your very detailed people. You're going to have your very get it done, get it done now people. You're going to have your very let's all have fun, get everything. You're going to have those people wherever you go, right? So people are people are people. You definitely need to be able to have those critical conversations. The better you are at having those difficult conversations, that's a great skill to have. And if you can demonstrate that in your interview or discuss a time when you were willing, brought up something that was uncomfortable and had to give bad news to somebody, or had to help them really think about their priorities, that's a skill set that will be very useful. Did I ask questions of the interview at the very beginning? No, I've warmed into it, right? They want to, I don't want to knock them off their feet, right? You just want this to be a nice conversational experience, right? And they're, you might not think it, but they're a little nervous too, because if they make a mistake, it's an expensive mistake on their part. So they want to make sure that they're getting somebody that can both do the work and will be pleasant to work with, right? That's what we all want. So yeah, I worked my way in moving into that. In solution collaborating with your team was my part role. It depends on the project. I do everything from today it was hey, can you just create these custom fields on these objects because we really need them for migrating? And I'm cool. Hey, there's this talk with the subject matter experts and figure out what it is they really want on this particular part of the business process. I will be moving more into a lead consultant kind of role over this next year, where I'll be working more specifically with clients on okay, let's help define your projects, figure out all those details, but I'm growing into that.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that, how much client interaction do you have? Are you more of a supportive role within your team of just doing the tasks that need done, or are you communicating with your clients?
Right. So I don't think there's a way of never speaking to the client. So sorry, people, if you're introverted, this is probably, just be aware. You'll have to up your energy on some days and talk to people. But if you are interested in more of the behind the scenes roles, those do exist. My preference has always been more on the interactive side of folks. So I like that end of things, and I've been negotiating that will be more of my role going forward. So it depends, but even if you can be the most technical expert, and you're still going to have to talk to somebody, because you're going to have to gather some sort of requirements and figure things out. I see there's a question. If you want to go down the developer path, is it a possibility to get hired by a company with health outcomes? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So one of the questions you're really going to need to listen to is how the organization that you're looking at defines the various roles, because they don't all name the same thing the same way. And you might see Salesforce consultant or developer or admin, and those could mean very different things, or business analyst, or they could mean very different things depending on who you're talking to. So asking, and you're getting really specific about, okay, what does that mean for your organization, versus making some assumptions and then going, oh wait, what does that really mean? So if I was going to define developer, I would say it's folks who are working more on the integration end of things, in particular, who are working probably more in the programmatic code of things. So working in Apex, working with the API, how Salesforce talks to other systems. Those are very much the developer end of things. But it's fuzzy, because I'm a consultant, but I spent the last 3 weeks working on building flows and taking things that were in Process Builder and moving them to Flow. Right? So is that a developer role? No, it's a consultant role, but only if you know that that's what a consultant role is, right, in your organization. So you need to ask, right? Do you all need to start with an admin or BA? You all need to start with the admin cert, because you can't get the consulting certs until you have the admin cert. But that doesn't mean that you have to start in an admin job, right? Or a BA job. Especially all you folks who raised your hands and said, yes, I have more than 5 years. You don't have to start in, don't sell yourself short.
So what were your first couple of days like as a new consultant?
Well, it was not typical, because Redpath is in a tremendous growth spurt. And so they have gone from hiring entirely seasoned people who can step in day one and lead a project, to me, right? Who, like you heard, just saw the software, got the cert, have plenty of professional experience, but not a whole lot of time in the software itself. So and my lead was hired in the same week that I was. So it was, or who was going to become my supervisor was hired in the same week that I was. So it was not a typical thing. I would not, I wouldn't say that we have a typical experience, but you got to roll with things. And it'll all depend on the size of the consulting firm. Like if you're going to a big one like Deloitte, I'm sure it's all day by day, and they know what you're going to be, and they've got a whole agenda and all that, versus, okay, go shadow this person on this project and read these documents and, come back and talk to us. And, are you doing okay? Are you still here? Are we still happy? It's a different culture.
So did you ever feel like you were drinking from a fire hose, as they say?
That's just par for any new job, right? I think that whatever new job you are in, remember I've been working with people in work transitions in my career. I have a hypothesis that the first year of any new job is that drinking from the fire hose. You're just like learning the whole thing, that not just the job, but the culture, like how did, who does what and where and how, whatever. Okay, so that's the first year. The second year, the job starts learning you, and it starts becoming like, oh, okay, like Arthur's really my go-to guy for this, right? He's the one that I do, who's always like interested in that. So I'm going to like hand things like that to Arthur, or and Melissa's the artist, so I'm just going to hand all the art stuff to Melissa, right? So whatever it is, you don't know, they start learning you as well as you learning them, and the job kind of starts adapting. That's been my professional experience my whole life. I don't know if it matches other folks' experience, but I think that's just part of the natural transition of working with people.
Yeah, I can definitely say my first year was definitely drinking from a fire hose, trying to learn everyone in different departments, what they do, what their job is, how my role interacts with their role.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you say your office culture is compared to your previous culture? Do you see any differences?
Well, I mean, there's a difference. I came from a lovely higher ed job, really great spot, and then I moved into a really great spot. So I mean, I lucked out, right, in both ways. But I really appreciate that Redpath really is deliberate about their culture and their values, and it's easy to say things like that, but when you have somebody when you know that somebody is struggling and they talk to their manager and they get a leave of absence and it's like, okay, we're just going to make this work, that speaks really highly of an organization. And I've seen that happen at mine. So kudos, right? That, when people are, at our annual meeting, I think I'm allowed to say this, we actually had a session where we listened to a Brene Brown podcast and then had a discussion about that in our vertical area. I mean, that's a dedication by the organization that kind of goes beyond, oh yeah, we have this value, right? So I appreciate that about mine. Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. Brene Brown is pretty awesome. I love her. Okay, so I have a question in chat. How have you handled your work-life balance as a consultant compared to your roles in healthcare or education?
Oh, right, in education. So there are moments when I wake up and go, oh, that's how to solve that. I mean, that happens. But at the moment, being one of the newbies, I'm still in the role of like, okay, other people are handing me the work rather than me being the one responsible for, organizing the whole thing. So, that's pleasant. It is pleasant to be in that level of responsibility. I've been in the higher level of responsibility. Both have benefits. It's just a matter of where you are. So right now it's delightful. We'll see, once I'm leading a couple projects, if I still feel the same way.
So what kind of hours do you keep? Is it like a normal, you're trying to get in your 40, or does it different because of consulting, or?
Yeah, there's a little bit of flex. You might do releases off hours. You will do releases off hours. So, in an evening or a weekend or whatever for putting some new feature into an org when people are not in there. But generally speaking, my job is pretty 8 to 5 or 9 to 6. Yep.
Okay, so does Redpath offer any personal career growth opportunities? I'm sure they encourage, continuing education, right?
Yep. So I can only speak to Redpath, but yes, they will subsidize your certs. So I came in with the admin cert, and over the last 6 months, I did 4 more, 3 in the Salesforce and 1 in one form assembly one. So yes, that's a big part of it. And you, again, knowing who you are, knowing what you want, being able to communicate that clearly to your supervisors. They want to know that. I mean, they want to know, okay, are you more interested in being the behind the scenes person who's going to like be the flow master and take on all of that, or are you going to, do you really dig and being the person in front, gathering requirements and talking to managing the team's work and the team's morale and all of those things. They want to know those things, and there's enough opportunities to go in lots of different directions.
That's good to know. It's always great if a company is willing to foot the bill for your certification exams.
Yeah.
Okay, so Lori asks, can you stagger your hours or work in an atypical work hour, like 12 noon to 8 p.m.?
I wouldn't, because you need to be available to the client. So you need to, if your client was working in Hawaii, then sure, you could do that. But generally speaking, you need to be available when you're going to be working with your client. That could also mean, however, that you're working evenings because you need to overlap with somebody in India or a team in India. So you need to be available 8 to 9 p.m. at the beginning of their workday or something like that. And there are members of my team who work 410s. So that's not an unheard of thing.
That's nice. 410s are always great. Get your Fridays. So what's the next step for you? Any specific career goals or projects you want to work on personally? Your next cert?
Right. Well, so yeah, like I said, I've already talked with my supervisor about moving more into project lead kinds of roles. So that nice thing of knowing that I don't have to be the technical expert in everything to be able to speak effectively to the clients and, manage and say, well, I know that we've solved like that before, and I'll go talk to my technical person and we'll, work up, a good answer for you. So that I'm looking forward to doing more of that and getting more on that end of things.
So someone asked, when you started your job, what cert did you have?
I had the admin cert, full stop, and I was partway through the Sales Cloud cert prep for that. I got that about a month into the job because I was already partway through working on that one. So if you want consulting jobs, those certs with consultant in the name, get your bonus points, and Salesforce actually gamifies like the whole consulting level thing. So they like it when you do that. My next one is planned to be the Experience Cloud. So I have Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, App Builder, and then I'm going to have the Experience Cloud, and then I think I'm going to follow that with the user experience one. So that's my current list or plan. Yep.
Someone asked, the project you are working on right now, is it Service Cloud or Health Cloud?
Yes, so it is Health Cloud. There is a modest Service Cloud element, but they're using an integration for a piece of that. So I'm less involved in that, not being in the developer strict end of things. It's been this has been my main health cloud one, but I've also worked in just straight sales cloud, working with versions of insurance companies mostly.
Is so for any of us who would want to potentially work with healthcare clients in the future, what cert, if any, do you know of? What do you think we should go for? I mean, obviously after we get our admin, right?
Right. After admin, I would say do the sales cloud. Well, app builder is nice. There's information in there that's just useful to know. Then the sales cloud and service cloud. I'm gonna say something maybe a little outrageous, but the health cloud thing is really expensive, and it's a really big piece of software, and it's got like at least 3 separate tentacles to it that each could be a separate cloud all by themselves. And if you look at the trailhead for the cert for that, even the first step is really developer heavy. And it's not like in the first level of the it's not like if you go into the developer text that you're going to find that in like the first layer. It's going to be like 2 or 3 layers down of the outline before you find the material that you need for that first technical step in there. At least that was what I was knowing and noticing. So I would say get experience in Health Cloud, but I wouldn't necessarily say like you got to have the Health Cloud cert, particularly if you're going to be working in a smaller organization that isn't going to want to pay the price tag for having a whole bunch of people in that Health Cloud, the implement in that part of it. So Salesforce.
That's pretty interesting to know. I didn't know that. Okay.
You probably are going to be looking at like multi-million-dollar companies before you're going to look at us at a health cloud implementation.
Gotcha. Got a question from the chat. From your perspective, can you tell the group what you feel is the difference between working at a consulting company versus being an independent consultant versus a temp?
Sure. As a consulting company, I really like that I don't have to do the sales. Yay, I don't have to bring in the project. Lovely. As an independent consultant, yeah, you got to do that. You are your own boss. You got to bring in the project. And there's that, feast or famine kind of quality to being an independent consultant. You are a business if you are an independent consultant, right? So all the elements relating to being a business person are right there, your responsibility. You may like that, you may not, but that's that. Versus a temp, you might be hired in as a temp. That I think could also be kind of fuzzy, because I'm sure that there are temp agencies that are happy to hire you from contract to contract to contract in a way that could feel kind of similar to being in a consulting company, but might not have the consistency of being in a consulting company where you work with the same consulting team every time, which is one of the nice things about, being in a consulting firm per se. I think that covers it. They're all called consultants. Yes, indeed, which is why asking in the interview is so key, right? Yeah. What is it that you're really getting into? Up to you to find out.
All right, last question that I have is, I know you've already mentioned it, but you can repeat any advice for everyone out there trying to make the transition into the Salesforce world.
Yes. All right. Yes. So I will say it again. You are valuable people. You have valuable experience. Do not sell yourself short. And also don't go in there ignorant. Actually know what it is that what it is that you like, what it is that you want to do. And also, do your homework about who they are, what they need. Be ready to ask them about what they need. Get those answers about what they need so that you can find out if you're actually a fit. So, and again, do your homework, prepare to have those discussions about salary and benefits. Practice that until you can actually say that price tag with a straight face, because yes, it matters. So find your sources for that. There's some great folks out there doing great work about, negotiating those things. So hunt them down. Do that bit.
Is there anyone else have any questions they want to put in the chat?
I think we can open the floor to everyone else if you want to say anything. Anybody? Don't be shy. I'm trying to.
They've been doing a great job of putting things in the chat, so I think we've got things there.
Okay. Yep. So this has been a very informational session, Amanda. Thank you so much for all of the tips and whatnot. So nice to have your insight.
You're very welcome. So we are all met through LinkedIn. So by all means, I'm happy to connect with all of you if I haven't already on LinkedIn. And I love getting success stories. It's part of what I groove on. So if you're like, hey, I'm in this situation, what do you think?
Yeah,
happy to be a set of ears.
I hope that eventually these interviews will also evolve into such kinds of interviews, like right now it's only informational, but eventually, hopefully we'll get more and more of the members having to share their success at getting a job and whatnot. It's going to be inspirational.
Great, yes.
All right, so I guess we can wrap this up now. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, if you don't mind, Lori, I have just to end it on a fun note. Amanda, I have some fun, silly questions. Maybe just one.
Okay. Right.
Okay. You're not prepared for this, but
okay. Right.
If you could have any superpower, what would it be and why?
Oh my! Any superpower?
I mean, there's tons to pick from.
I know. And as a sci-fi person, that makes it even harder for me. Oh gosh. Well, yeah, it could be really fun to breathe underwater. I might go with that one for the moment.
That would be fun. I would like to teleport.
Anyway. That would be cool too. Yes, I've got enough long distance friends. That would be kind of awesome. Thank you. I'll go with that one too.
And then, so if animals could talk, who do you think would be the rudest? For me, I know it's going to be cats.
Yeah. I mean,
jerks.
Gosh, right? Yeah. I mean, none of them really live our social roles. So I think that we would learn different social conventions if we were actually talking to animals.
Okay, last one. What did your parents tell you as a kid that you found out was a lie as an adult? So things like the old, you can't turn on the interior lights when you're driving because that's illegal.
Oh yeah, I saw that go by. No, my parents are awesome. I don't know. I don't really have something but I will say that one of the catchphrases in my family that I think I would leave you with is keep your options open. Like, that keep your options open even while you're searching. So, the once in a lifetime job opportunity will show up like every 2 weeks. Don't freak out if this one is, if this one may look delightful, but there will be another one if it's not this one. So just, keep your options open. Don't shut down too fast on things.
I'd say that's good advice.
So thank you so much, folks.
Can I take a picture first? All right, smile. Okay, all right. Thank you so much, everyone, for this. And thank you so much, Amanda.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
We'll have
I look
another-
forward to seeing all your success stories.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you, too.